So with that, I will hand across to Paul to take us through the evening. Just let me know when you want the slides moving, Paul.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As I say, my name is Paul Codeine. Just a bit about myself. Been in the force for over 25 years, and 23 of them years have been involved investigating the supply, use of controlled drugs, and working with drug users and drug dealers. Throughout them years, I've gained knowledge which allows me to give expert evidence at Crown Court. For my sins, about 5 or 6 years ago, I got given the role of CDLO as well, Controlled Drugs Liaison Officer, and it was a whole new world to me, having to learn about the schedules and all the abbreviations that the NHS use that, as a police officer, we don't use day to day. So please, if I'm speaking in police terms, please let me know, and I'll try and put it in language you understand. I'm not a presenter, as I say, I'm a police officer, so I'll try my best to make this interesting for you. So that's a bit about myself and my background. As I say, feel free to ask questions as we go along, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them for you. So we move on to the next slide, please. So first of all, I put this presentation together for police officers because obviously we're used to dealing with class A, B, C drugs, cannabis, heroin, crack cocaine, ecstasy, etc. But then over the years, we've seen an increase in the demand for prescription-only medicines, and one of the areas that's increased significantly is codeine, and we've seen more and more codeine lean cough medicines being seized in Cheshire, and we've actually had one male who sadly died, who was taking his own product apart from producing it and supplying it nationwide on the internet. So there was a lack of knowledge around police officers of what they were seeing on the street. So this presentation initially was put together for police officers within Cheshire, and then obviously they've adapted it, and I've offered to present it to yourselves tonight. So next slide, please. As I say, the history, people have been misusing codeine for many years, and let me just get this up on here. And lean is being made popular within the music industry. However, it's been around for in the late 90s, but it has been around a lot longer than that. In the 70s and 80s, it was certainly here, and people were abusing it. Next slide, please. So codeine on the street, codeine lean is known as purple drank, bar, Texas tea, and the term lean normally comes from the position you're in once you've taken it, and the effects it can give you. And I've seen some youngsters that have been on this and that they're an absolute mess. I'll go into it later. It's not just the codeine, it's what it's mixed with when it's produced illegally. So we'll go into that in a bit. Next slide, please. So the most common ingredients are the cough syrups that contain codeine and other type medicines. The cough syrups normally mixed with a fizzy drink and sometimes alcohol. This is if you buy in the cough syrup over the counter. However, we'll go on to the illicit made cough syrup in a bit. Sometimes people add the hard sweets to it as well to make it taste better. Phenergan is a favourite, and certainly we've had a lot of reports within Cheshire, people trying to buy large amounts of Phenergan over the counter in pharmacies. So it's still there, it's still an issue, and I got a report this week actually of someone trying to buy it in Cheshire this week. So other variations of the codeine lean can be made. It'll depend what the supplier has in stock to make, or what ingredients they have in stock. If they've got no codeine, they will use other tablets, Xanax, etc., diazepam, So although it says Codeine Lean on the bottle, you could be getting other medicines mixed in there that you're unaware of. Next. So the stuff that's been made in, as I said, made certainly in Cheshire, was made with either codeine, diazepam, or Xanax, and it's hard to gauge how much of each product they were putting into the Codeine Lean because it will depend on the desired effect of the manufacturer, what desired effect they want. So they were placing it in, testing it. If they weren't happy, they'd put a bit more in. So you don't actually know what you're getting, what percentage of codeine will be in there, and obviously the dangers of mixing it with the alcohol as well. So what they do, they'll crush the medicine up, they'll mix it with the food colouring and a non-alcoholic drink, and then they'll mix it with an alcohol. In the case that we'll go on to later, that was vodka, and that will then be placed into the medicine bottles, which look like, certainly to a lot of our police officers, they just think it's a cough syrup that's come from a pharmacy, which we'll show you in a bit. So next slide, please. The effects of taking codeine, obviously, or the Codeine Lean. You've got the euphoria, relaxation. It acts on the central nervous system. Obviously, I know you're a lot more qualified in relation to medical effects than I am. But this was, as I say, I put this together for police officers. It can lead to other side effects which are less nice for the user. Can we next slide, please? And some of the things that the gentleman who I dealt with, hallucinations, extreme sedation, lost coordination, etc. The lad who sadly died, he was arrested twice for manufacturing this, and the first time I dealt with him, basically when I went into his bedroom, next to his bed there was a bin and it was just full of sick, and he was explaining to me that when he takes it, he regularly has seizures and he vomits. It didn't stop him from doing it, and the second time we found him because he'd sadly passed away during the night from one of the seizures he had through taking his own product. So that there are dangers and there are other unpleasant side effects to taking this medicine. Okay, next slide, please. Obviously, we've said there, mixing alcohol with codeine can have respiration depression. I've been to a presentation today, and there was a professor there from Manchester University who was talking about this effect at the moment, and we're seeing on the streets at the moment, certainly in Manchester, the purity of heroin has dropped. Whether or not that's down to COVID and the availability. The purity of heroin in Manchester now at the moment is between 2% and 22%. And as a result of that, a lot of the heroin users are swapping over to pregabalin, codeine, etc., diazepam. And there's a lot of false tablets on the market. And because they're taking the tablets with alcohol, we are seeing a lot of medical episodes. We've had quite a lot of deaths in the Northwest from people taking prescription-only medicines alongside alcohol, etc. Interestingly enough, in Cheshire, we're not seeing the purity of our heroin dip. Our heroin in Cheshire at the moment is between, I would say, 40% up to 68%. So it's double what it is in Manchester. We have had some intelligence to say that drug users are swapping to prescription-only medicines because they perceive the quality of the heroin to be low at the moment in Cheshire. And we have had 4 deaths recently because they're using it alongside the heroin as well. And in fact, our heroin is very, very strong. Interestingly, some of our heroin dealers are actually from the Manchester area. they're coming into Cheshire dealing. So it's quite strange that across the border in Manchester they're selling it very, very weak, and in Cheshire we're getting it very strong. So we can't explain that, but we have had a number of deaths, and in the background there's been heroin use, but in the background of all the deaths has been prescription-only medicines as well. So we are having some issues, and again that's why this was put together to educate officers. Okay, next slide, please. As we know, codeine itself is addictive, and people who take purple drank or codeine lean, they do report getting addicted to it and becoming dependent on it. And as a result of that, they have to take more to get the desired effects. Some people report that they are, as a result of that, they are getting withdrawal symptoms, and they're listed there on the bottom: irritability, sweating, trouble sleeping, restlessness, and there's a whole host of side effects. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So that's basically a bit of the background. Are there any questions so far before I go on to the actual lab that we had in Cheshire?
There's nothing in the box so far, Paul, but if we give it 10 seconds or so, people may well type based on your request.
Okay, no problem. Okay, nothing coming in. So, give you a bit of background for this. What's the question there? So it's not showing up properly on my screen.
So there's something in the chat that's come up that says, have you found this to be more common with liquid or tablet-based products?
The Codeine Lean has been, certainly in Cheshire, has been in liquid. However, we do get a lot of, there's a massive business for prescription drugs such as diazepam, pregabalin, etc. in the tablet form. And they'll sell each tablet on the street for about £1 a tablet. We had a job the other week where we seized, I think there was in excess of 50,000 tablets, diazepam tablets, in a suitcase. So there's a big market for them. They were due to be shipped down to London. So we do have there is a big street market for that type of tablet medication as well. So this illicit lab in Cheshire, the background to it was a Saturday evening, and the motorway police saw a gentleman on the motorway services smoking what appeared to be a cannabis cigarette in his car on the motorway services. When they approached him and stopped him, he was acting nervous. And when they looked in his boot, he had a box containing 30 bottles of what was labelled a codeine cough syrup. The officers didn't think that was suspicious. They thought it was just an over-the-counter cough syrup. However, because of the cannabis, they decided to search. He got arrested and they searched his home address. When they walked into his home address, the first thing they saw was red stained coffee filters. Now, I don't know whether people's knowledge are aware of when you make methamphetamine, one of the signs that we tell people to look for when they go into an illicit lab is red stained coffee filters, because of the phosgene method they use to produce methamphetamine. So straight away, the officers did the correct thing and withdrew from the premises, and I was phoned Saturday evening and asked to turn out to this job to assess it, because they thought it was a methamphetamine lab. From the information I've got, it was quite easily downgraded from a methamphetamine lab to a codeine lean lab. So we start the next slide, please. So this was a penthouse in Chester. The gentleman was paying up front. I think he paid up front for a year's rent. So there was no one visiting the address trying to collect rent, etc. It was all paid for. And as you can see there, you've got a bottle of vodka, and you can see clearly there was a white sediment in the bottle. In this case, he'd actually run out of codeine, and he was using diazepam. He was crushing it up and mixing it into the vodka. Obviously, the risk for this is when he's pouring that into the next part of the method, is you can't actually monitor how much that diazepam is going into each bottle. So someone could buy 2 bottles and be able to drink one quite safely, but then the next bottle could be double the strength, and they could have severe side effects to that. I can see another question just popped up there. Do we want to save it to later, or do you want me to answer it now?
Go ahead now. So, question from Wendy is based on is it just codeine tablets that's used, or do the combination products such as paracetamol and codeine that are often over the counter in pharmacies?
For this particular product, it would be diazepam, Xanax, codeine. However, what they will do if they can't get codeine, what they'll do is they've got the cocoa moles, and if they crush the cocoa moles up and dissolve it in a cold drink, the codeine will dissolve, but the paracetamol won't. The paracetamol tends to sediment out, and then the codeine is left in the fizzy drink. So they can pour fizzy drink out with the codeine in and leave behind the paracetamol, so they're not getting the unnecessary risks of taking too much paracetamol. So there are ways around it.
Well, thanks, Paul. There's also something that's been sent as a PM in the chat, which is an intelligence bit.
Okay.
Hopefully the person involved has passed to the Merseyside CDL.
Okay, no problem. Let me just. I'll have a read of that bit. Yeah, it should have been passed to my counterpart in Merseyside.
We've got the contact details at the end for the person who's put that up, so they can have a look.
Okay, no problem. Will you be able to forward me that if it disappears off the screen?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, thank you. Next screen, please. At the end of the presentation, I'll give you the Merseyside counterpart details on how to contact him. So in the house, we had in the left-hand side picture is all the food colourings. You can see there the fizzy drinks, and there were boxes and boxes and boxes of empty medicine bottles waiting to be filled. Next slide, please. So this is what the officer first saw. So you've got the red coloured filter, coffee filter papers, and in there was a mixture of the fizzy drink, the food colouring, and the vodka with the tablets crushed into it. And basically what they're doing now, they're taking out any lumps of medicines that hadn't quite dissolved. Again, it makes it hard for them to monitor how much of the active ingredient was going into these, but the danger of mixing the medicines with the alcohol, you'll be far more aware of than me. So, you know, it's a risky process for them. So we'll go on to the next screen, please. So as I said before, there was numerous empty bottles of medicine bottles, and we see on the left there, you can see the pharmacy labels, and basically on the internet somewhere, you can search for them labels and they will be free to you. If you just buy some sticky labels for your printer, press print, and you will get pharmacy labels printed off as we see in the picture. So he just downloaded the template off the internet free of charge and was printing them off onto sheets of sticky labels and then placing them onto the medicine bottles. Next screen, please. Okay, there's a close-up of the medicines, the end product. As you can see there, it's labelled as a codeine syrup. Take 5 ml 3 times a day if needed. Out of all the cases nationwide, it's always them 2 types of stickers that are on them, probably because they're easily available for the suppliers to get on the internet. The chap that we dealt with in Chester was selling them nationwide. for 60 to £100 a bottle. So you can imagine the type of money he was making. He had thousands and thousands of pounds in his accounts. He was unemployed. As I say, he paid for his penthouse up front, cash, Rolex watches, stacks of cash throughout the premises as well. And when we did his online activity, we could see his customer base throughout the country. Sadly, he passed away through taking this, which isn't really a good advertisement for his product. However, I think it was more the amount of the product he was taking. He certainly, when we went in the premises, he certainly had a drug problem, and the amount of empty alcohol bottles in there, apart from the vodka he was used to produce, was tremendous. And as I say, he didn't get prosecuted because he passed away before the file was ready for CPS to take it to court. So that's basically a whirlwind tour of what we saw, and I think it's important, certainly for police officers, to be aware that this product is out there, and there's a massive market for it. Youngsters are desperate for it. We regularly see boxes of this turning up. We did a raid in Crewe the other week where in the shed there was a hold all with about 100 bottles of this stuff in the shed. Obviously, the codeine is class B drug, top of my head. So it is still an offence for it to be supplied unless it's on prescription. So just be aware when people are coming in trying to obtain these medicines that they could be using them to make products like this. And when you look at the amount of money they're selling it for, if they can purchase it, normally if they buy in bulk, if they buy codeine in bulk, they'll probably be paying anywhere between 20p to 50p a tablet. So you can see the markup. Buy a few bottles of vodka, buy your labels are free of charge off the internet, all you've got is your food colouring, your fizzy drinks, and your empty bottles. So there's vast amounts of money to be made out of this stuff. Next slide, please. So what do you do if you suspect a colleague has a drug problem, or the diverting drugs, or if you get someone suspicious in your pharmacy? Report it to your management. Contact 101 to report the matter to the police, and contact your local CDLO. I know certainly in Cheshire and Merseyside we've both got CDLOs. Manchester's got CDLOs. I'm not sure about Lancashire. I think they've just put one in place. However, if you think there's a risk to life, or there's an offence being committed in front of you, and there's a likelihood we can detain these individuals involved, then please dial 999 and ask for the police to attend urgently. Obviously, secure CCTV. If you report something to the police on 101, it's not like it used to be years ago, where when I started, the incidents were dealt with rather quickly. It can be a few days before the police are sent to matters like this. So if you've got CCTV, before it gets recorded over, please secure the CCTV evidence for that offence. And as I say, if you've got a colleague who you feel has got a drug problem, signpost them towards help. I know certainly the medical people that I've dealt with who have had drug problems. I've dealt with a nurse who, by the time I got to find out about it, had been suspended for nearly a year, and it came through to me that he'd written a fraudulent prescription for codeine. And my first question to him when I went to see him was, "Do you need help?" And considering he's been suspended under an internal investigation for nearly a year, I was the first person to ask him if he needed help. So you know, it's not about prosecution for colleagues, etc. It's about getting them the help. If they've got a drug problem, they need help. First of all, we can deal with what comes after later. Yeah, certainly the medical people that I've dealt with have had a background where they've normally hurt themselves at work and they've been in pain, they've been on prescription drugs, the prescription has stopped, so they've started diverting the drugs from work. So yeah, first of all, get them help if you can, and get them to, you know, and then obviously we will deal with it. And a lot of the jobs that I deal with doesn't result in court, results in out of court disposals, cautions, etc. So, but obviously, if it's a member of the public, then you know we'll deal with that. Certainly, if they're producing codeine lean or selling drugs on the streets, then that's obviously a supply matter, and we'll deal with that more seriously. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so certainly in Cheshire, you've got myself and my colleague Steve Page. You can contact there. I say these numbers will be available. The best number to get me on, to be honest with you, is the mobile number, because I'm not always at my desk. So if you need to speak to me about anything at all, please feel free to call me. If you do report something to the police via 101, can you please give me a call with the incident number, so that I can check that the incident is being dealt with correctly. Because, as I say, officers aren't trained into what to look for at pharmacies and other care facilities in relation to prescription-only medicines. So I tend to have an overview of the jobs and guide people through the investigations. Next slide, please. Oh, I thought Paul Story's details were on there.
I thought they were as well, but they're not.
Right.
I just wanted to come on at that point because I noticed they weren't there. Most of the people who are watching tonight are from the Cheshire area, so those details are absolutely relevant for them. We do have a number of visitors as well from the Merseyside area and from the Greater Manchester area. So if you're not sure of your CDLO's contact details, certainly for Cheshire and Merseyside, all of them are on every one of the LPC websites. So please have a look and contact your LPC if you struggle to find that. I'm 90% sure the same can go for Greater Manchester as well. It's been a couple of years since I had a look, but it certainly used to be there.
Yes, I know in Manchester it's Stefan and Mike Beard, and in Merseyside it's Paul Story. I say, if anyone has any difficulties getting their contact details, I thought it was on the end of the presentation, just contact me, drop me an email, or drop me a phone call, and I will be able to provide them details for you.
Well, Paul, we do have a couple of questions that have come in. If anyone else watching has got questions, get typing now, because obviously we're going to go through them. So the first one was around, shouldn't there be more restrictions on the sale of these and possibly make them prescription only? Well, Vince, that's one you can answer, but it'd be interesting to hear your comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, codeine itself is prescription only, isn't it? From my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously your lower strength cocodamols are over the counter. I believe, I mean, you probably tell me more. Phenergan, I think you can buy that over the counter, can't you?
Indeed.
Yes. I was quite surprised that Phenergan wasn't a prescription only medicine. I thought it was. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawmaker. For me, yes, they need to be tightened up. I know in some hospital settings, the diversion of codeine has been horrendous in some hospitals, and codeine is now treated in some hospitals as a full CD with 2 signatures. So all I would say is, when you're at work, just keep an eye on what's being ordered in relation to codeine, because we've had a lot of incidents recently where the codeine's been extra codeine's been ordered, and it's not been hitting the shelves. It's been getting diverted before it's been hitting the shelves. So just keep an eye on your stock levels of codeine and what's actually been ordered and purchased.
Well, We had a comment around the prescription labels, because obviously there was the 2 American branded pharmacies there, and the question centres around, is it a sensible thing for pharmacies to consider what they do with their blank labels, given that's the diversion route that there's been?
Yeah, certainly. If these people or these individuals can get hold of any of your blank labels, then again they will readily use them. And if they can get UK based pharmacy labels, it's better for them, because when law enforcement see them, it does look like a normal prescription from pharmacy.
Another one around the combination products. So just as a follow-up from the cocodamol follow-up, we've obviously also got products involving dihydrocodeine rather than codeine. Is that something that you've seen contribute to incidents at all?
I say all these types of drugs are misused, and we have seen them. Yeah, if they can't get the codeine, they'll move on to the next drug. These medicines are readily available on the dark web, massively available. I could probably go on my internet now and order them and get them delivered to my home address. There's a huge market for them.
Yeah. I think they might be suspicious of your work address there.
Yes, they might be.
Another question there around, are dealers substituting codeine for anything else, making this even more dangerous, sort of the equivalent of cutting their drugs?
Certainly, as I mentioned before, Xanax, that's used, the diazepam, pregabalin, so that they will use all the drugs if they're not available. In relation to them cutting it, at the moment, there is a big problem with illicit, what appear to be prescription-only drugs being manufactured in the Greater Manchester area, and I know Greater Manchester have got a police operation looking into that, and it is believed that a lot of the illicit manufactured, what appear to be prescription-only medicines, are coming from the northwest at the moment. Again, the raw products are available, and the organised crime groups will actually ship them in from China, etc. And it's not known what the ingredients are within them. And the doctor today from Manchester University, was saying that a lot of the users are aware that they're not or they perceive them not to be the original type of drug. So instead of taking the desired dose that you should be taking, they're actually taking handfuls of them, because they suspect the amount of drug in there to be a lot lower. Whereas in fact, some of the medicines that have been recovered have actually double strength. So that's causing severe problems.
Well, any other questions if people want to drop it in? I'll give it a couple of minutes, and then if there are no other questions, we'll wrap it up.
Can you just forward me them details from the pharmacy in Sefton, is it? And I will make sure that gets to my counterpart in Merseyside.
Yes, that's fine. I've linked the Merseyside CDLO in the chat. That's Paul's story. So James, if you can have a look at that and send those details in, that's great. One question from James: if you do have suspicious purchases, what key details do you need? Is it height, weight, description? What's helpful?
Description. If you know there's somewhere within your pharmacy where you get a really good camera shot of them, CCTV is important, and obviously if you can, without putting yourselves at risk or on show, a vehicle registration or any details. I know there was one reported recently where they'd phoned up trying to order large amounts of prescription or over-the-counter medicines, and the price they were quoted was an elevated price, which raised the suspicion straight away, and they were happy to pay that. So before they come in, the pharmacist phoned the police, and I think the police managed to get there before the person came in.
Brilliant. For those pharmacies on the Wirral, there are a couple on the list. I think we've put out in our direct newsletter, we've had a number of people doing just that, phoning ahead of time, asking specifically about Fennigan and arranging to come in with quite a believable story. You've just got to go through and make sure that you follow the normal safeguarding steps you would do on those sorts of sales.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just mention another fantastic bit of work by one of the pharmacists in Knutsford. It basically got reported to me that a doctor, a hospital consultant, in fact, was presenting private prescriptions at the pharmacy for numerous medicines, not some of which were just over the counter, but also codeine. And she quickly cottoned on that he'd been in a bit more, and it was for a patient that was meant to be visiting from Scotland. And she quickly cottoned on that he'd been in a bit too often. Off her own back, she approached other pharmacies in the area and identified that he'd done the same in numerous other pharmacies in Cheshire. And I went around Manchester, Merseyside, he'd done it all over the place, and he was getting thousands of codeine tablets a day by giving private prescriptions in. So just keep an eye on private prescriptions that are coming in, just to make sure they're legitimate. And any concerns, give us a call.
Well, and we've had a question come in around what's the situation with patient confidentiality, etc., when reporting concerns.
Obviously, if you've got a concern, you report it to the police. If you think there's a crime being committed, then there's a crime, you report a crime, so that'll be fine.
Yeah, there's a really good document I think it's on PSNC actually, around safeguarding policy, and it's in a lot of the children and young persons one around when's appropriate to provide patient details to the police and when's not. And it's a pretty decent, from a pharmacist point of view, personally, it's a pretty decent guide to see what you can share under what circumstances and where the ethical line can be drawn. So if you're struggling with that, let us know and we can find that link for you.
Yes.
Well, so any last questions coming in? So a heads up from one of the attendees there around the use of FP10 paper, so via walk-in centres, etc. So ETP and SCR don't always reflect those issues coming through.
Yes.
And then obviously there's other routes, so things like CPCS, so referrals to the pharmacy from 111, which give a little bit of a presumption of genuineness. Just be really aware if you're getting similar sort of requests, or if there's something that doesn't quite feel right about the client. I mean, obviously the majority of use of these medicines is legitimate, and that's why they're given the classification that they are. But it's everything we can do to help trying to weed out the illicit uses and the illicit purchases of these.
Certainly, we did have an incident with a supplier in that an organised crime group, due to COVID, managed to get around security questions from pharmacies when placing orders. So what they were doing is, because all the call handlers were working at home, when the call got diverted to them, it was just a withheld number, whereas normally it would come up with the name of the pharmacy calling. So the person was phoning up and they would place an order for a pharmacy in the area. And because they had people working within the distributor that had the access to the order, to the account numbers, etc., they were able to place large orders for controlled drugs. And then what was happening when they were getting dispatched, the delivery driver would deliver the normal stuff, but then keep back the extra drugs, and they wouldn't leave the delivery note. So when it was getting checked or when it was getting put on the shelves, the delivery note wasn't with the boxes. So the pharmacies never knew that it'd been over-ordered, and it was the small independent pharmacies that picked up on the billing, because they were getting billed for a lot of drugs that weren't getting delivered, and that's how it got identified. So that they got around. All I will say is, when your drugs get delivered, make sure you get that delivery note and check the delivery note against what's in the boxes.
Brill. So any last questions from anyone?
I hope it's been of use to you. I'll say, if you've got any questions in the future, just give me a call.
Brilliant. Well, I can't see anything else coming in, so thank you so much, Paul. I'm sure everyone will join me in thanking you for your time. I think it's been really valuable, and it's been insightful to see. It's a sort of the other side of the stories that we don't often hear about in pharmacy, so it's been really, really useful to hear that. What we'll do, we'll make this available to other contractors as well, so if they do want to catch up on it, they can, because I think that would be really, really useful. But thank you for this, and perhaps we'll invite you back in 6 months or so if there's any updates. Yeah,
and likewise, if you have any seminars on other subjects, I'm always trying to learn as well. So obviously I don't work in your industry, so for me to listen to other presentations would be useful for my learning. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we've got to 40 pharmacists tonight, which is more than we would have got if it was a face-to-face event. So thank you everyone for giving up part of your evening, and I hope it's been useful. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Good night.